Everybody, it's going down. There has been a Conservative Inc. concerted effort to fight each other to the death, and I'm going to be covering it today. I'm coming out of retirement, out of a hiatus, to talk about one of the most important issues, which is going to be the fact that Steven Crowder, who is one of the most highly subscribed conservatives on YouTube, him going out and against Conservative Inc. and more in particular the Daily Wire. Now, this is really important to me as somebody who doesn't even watch Crowder because I can realize the significance of calling out such a big institution on the right wing while all the while making yourself out to be the dumbass that you are. And so this is how Steven Crowder actually lost this battle to Ben Shapiro, to Jeremy Boring, and the entire Daily Wire staff. And again, I don't really agree with Daily Wire at all. And by that I mean I'm more conservative than they are, and yet I still feel like they're in the right. Now, I'll tell you what. Basically, what had happened was that Crowder started out independent, right? He is this Leaf Michigander who apparently started his clout as of several years ago. He had the show. He's like a comedian, news guy, and apparently what he did was he started independent, and then he had to deal with the Blaze. And the main grift for him, which I don't have a problem with, grift. I just use it as a term for monetization. Was in particular the Mug Club. Now, this is important for people to understand, right? As conservatives, you would most likely want to be able to sell your own merch than to be reliant on ads, which is why he did that. I don't really begrudge him for selling overpriced mugs because again he's trying to live off the fan base in such a way that is not facilitated by Google or Meta or whatever liberal institution you're talking about. So I'm completely okay with that. Now the issue arises from the fact that he's in a position where he's going to be looking like he's opportunistic if he's selling these things to the fans. And you hear a lot of jokes about Crowder predicated on the mug thing. We'll just overlook that for now. Now, going forwards in time, he does a deal with the Blaze, and in part, that is what makes him a lot of money, millions of dollars over the last several years. Now, the thing is here is that he generally was making the money off the mug thing. Now that that's gone, because again, he tried to make this huge multi-million dollar deal with the Daily Wire. Officially, what the contract said was that he was trying to get a deal of 12.5 million a year for, I believe, 4 years, for a litany of different services. I think like multiple shows a week plus a movie or whatever documentary, and the funding orifices and whatever was discussed in these videos exposing the Daily Wire. Then again in that Boring video made by Jeremy Boring, who's 43 years old, going on 60, Steve Carell looking ass. He generally disputed every point in such a way that was very articulate, and he came off as very non-offensive. Now here's an important thing. Ben Shapiro, as far as I know, hasn't said anything of importance, so I'll just not include him. Candace Owens had made her own video against him. Brett Cooper, that bitch, she's mid. Anyway, the point being is that Brett made a video against it. So the whole institution is going against Steven Crowder. Now, you might think that because the people that are very cucked, that are very moderate, are against Steven, that he's in the right, and generally that is not true. Now, there's sometimes when the populist insurgency in any political system is going to be looking like they're in the right just because a lot of the right people are hating on them, but sometimes they are actually in the wrong. For instance, if a populist were to be encountering with a bunch of crimes and a bunch of the establishment people are trying to crap on them, predicated on the basis of them being criminals. Yes, the right people are hating on the populist, but the populist is actually in the wrong, and that's a very niche scenario. So this is one of these examples where the guy who is positioning himself to be to the right of the mainstream is actually in the wrong. And again, I'm not saying this as to defend Ben Shapiro or whatever because I think he's very lame. But the point being here is that Steven Crowder really bit himself in the butt because what he ultimately ended up doing was he made empty threats about how he was going to pull out receipts and that I don't want to name names about Con Inc. And so people got all excited saying like, oh, he's going to expose all these things, right? And, immediately using Occam's razor, you would assume he's exposing things about the contract. But some people that I know, friends of mine, were saying, well, oh, he's going to expose the secret parties and you know what I mean, right? The Bohemian Grove type of stuff. Like, come on, let's get fucking real. That's not going to be exposed if that is real. Anyway, you have to understand that in politics, people have blackmail on each other. So there's certain red lines that you don't cross, and he didn't cross them. Anyway, so going forwards, so that reply video by the Daily Wire and Jeremy Boring, who's the CEO of that company, went really well in regards to reception. Now, what I will say is that he comes out with a rebuttal video that is Steven Crowder, and he comes out with an expose using a recorded phone call from a while ago, discussing the particular aspects that he had problem with in the contract negotiation part of this whole dilemma. And apparently, what people didn't know was that Crowder wanted $30 million a year instead of 12.5, which is a far cry from what he probably deserved monetarily, hence why the Daily Wire didn't go through with the deal. Now, this could be seen as a sort of backlash given the fact that he did not get that money. So he feels emasculated from the fact that they didn't value his product as much as he valued himself, which is a complete disconnect from the superego and whatever else you want to use psychology term here 101. Regardless of that fact, we saw that Crowder lashed out. He made this video. He shot himself in the foot because not only did he burn the bridge with the Daily Wire as an institution, but more in particular, he burnt the bridge with any content creator associated with it, because you can be damn sure that Ben Shapiro and Boring will certainly try to tard wrangle anybody who tries to be friends with Steven and make content with them later on. And again, he, as in Crowder, did not let people in on the fact that he has contracts with his own employees and how people left his show and how they probably have grievances of their own over payment and whatever, and yet he didn't discuss this. So I mean, it's somewhat of a tragedy of the commons where people are trying to fend out for themselves, but at the same time not considering that the Daily Wire, yes, they're not perfect, but I mean, in the current climate where we're struggling to get monetized, of course they're going to be censoring you in regards to keeping your channel monetized. And Steven Crowder was trying to play it up as if the Daily Wire were cucking on the political issues just for the sake of cucking on them and not because they were trying to make money. And again, he relays the mantra of business is business and that is toxic, and that is true. But again, if we're trying to have a sustainable model for business, we need to make sure that we're actually making money. And the problem is that since the conservatives are so under leveraged in a lot of the Hollywood sort of areas in regards to actual film, you have to then make as much money as humanly possible. At the same time, you must cuck on the issues, and that's too bad, honestly, because if you were gonna cuck on the issues, you're gonna lose a lot of your cool factor and honesty. And Steven might have had a problem with that. The only problem with that, in the hypocrisy in the entire expose saga that he's in right now, is that he was willing to actually completely cooperate with the Daily Wire had they paid him the $30 million he wanted. So if anything, it wasn't the problem that, oh, I don't want to compromise on my principles. It's, I don't want to compromise on my principles for 12 million, but 30 would have been okay. I mean, it's the equivalent of like a girl said, "Oh, I wouldn't sleep with that guy for $200. What about 500? Oh, okay. Well, I mean, then you're not this puritanical virgin, are you? You're just an opportunist who wanted to get paid more, and now you feel offended because you were rejected for the price that you were requesting. In which case, you need to get your clout up, Steven. You have to have more profitable content. And also, there's little details that he left out and misrepresented. For instance, he was going to lose pay on shows that he did not produce. And Jeremy made an excellent point to say that we are only expecting you to work half of the days out of the year, plus all these weeks of vacation, thus meaning that you had all this time to do shows necessarily because, obviously, you can make shows pre-recorded and release them on different dates. And so, I mean, that work schedule was completely reasonable. So for him to represent that as if they're really screwing him over is just completely antithetical to the whole deal in the first place. And then again, this other aspect of him producing content that was really, just a bunch of like ad reads and whatnot. You need to do this. Virtually any show that is on YouTube to any capacity has to watch what they say to be advertiser friendly. Again, that is not ideal. And in fact, we saw that even 10 years ago that ads were rolling on a lot of videos that were very salacious and nobody had a problem with it. So there does exist a world where theoretically we could have all this far right content with advertisements on it. But because of the adpocalypse and a lot of issues that arose after Trump, you could see that this whole reality is collapsing in front of everybody. And so we have to adjust properly, because, it might be one thing for you to say that, oh, well, Daily Wire is this like $1 million company. You guys can do anything. And you're having these meetings with Susan Wojcicki. But the whole point of them meeting with big tech is to say like, oh, we're going to be the good boys. We're going to behave. We're going to be the controlled ops, right? If you're the controlled ops on the block, you cannot hit the master. You cannot bite the hand that feeds you. So the Daily Wire has no leverage. If YouTube changes their guidelines, it's not like they can band together to be anti-YouTube, because it doesn't really work that way. The liberals have complete stranglehold control over the whole basically dialogue generally, right? So the point being is that we cannot expect big tech to acquiesce to the Daily Wire's demand, meaning that the Daily Wire shouldn't be expected to fight for you in any particular way, because they can't. Meaning that you'll have to cuck to the ads. You're gonna have to cuck to whatever they say, and if you don't like it that way, then make it on your own. Now the only issue here is that his solution for doing that was to introduce the Mug Club, but because he probably figured that he wouldn't make enough money if he were to just do that the normal way, he decided to completely torch the relation he had with the Daily Wire for clout, I suppose, and out of his ego being hurt, and then making profit off of that way. The only issue being is that if you're going to originate your clout off of drama, it won't be sustainable in any sort of non-toxic way, meaning that even if he does make a lot of money for the first couple months, it's going to dissipate gradually over time, which is truly unfortunate for the guy because he realistically could have just worked for the Daily Wire for less money and he would have been okay. And again, we're talking about somebody making a difference between like a net $6 million a year versus a net 18. And so when we're talking about like rich and just really rich, then that's just you being greedy. So and again, Steven Crowder, do you let your employees say the most outlandish things on your shows? No. Why? Because you'd get banned. Okay, so then why are you complaining? You're going to complain about censorship from the Daily Wire or the Blaze, and it's like, well, do you censor your employees? Can your employees on your show say the N word, say bike with a K in it? Can they say a bunch of racially insensitive jokes, or are you going to censor them to keep everybody afloat in the company? And the answer is, of course, that you're going to be reasonable about it and censor people so they can have everybody's families fed. But you're going to castigate the Daily Wire for doing the same thing. And it's just very disingenuous of him, which is why he's coming off as a fake actor. And then here's the other thing, a bad actor, that is to say. Now that I corrected my speech, I can get on to the next point. The next point is going to be today how I believe that him showing a recording of Jeremy Boring talking about whatever is actually sowing seeds of distrust about him as a character in the right wing compared to everybody else. What do I mean by this? Listen, there are people that record instances of other people talking in a way to collect blackmail and leverage over them. And that is very toxic. Why? Well, because then you can't really trust anybody. In the right wing, if you speak in public about certain things on YouTube, you'll get banned. Hence why I censor myself to some moderate extent to stay on YouTube. And the thing is that everybody else does that. And sometimes when we're in confidence, when we're talking among men, when we're talking with the boys, like on campus, if I'm talking to the guys, in a dorm room or something, I'm not gonna censor myself as much because nobody's recording me. And that's the whole point. It's trust to say, you know what, I can use these jokes because it's among the guys. For instance, there was a Richard Nixon call with Ronald Reagan where Ronald Reagan made a racist joke about how the Africans were surprised to be wearing shoes at the UN meeting or something in the 70s. And it was a joke. He wasn't actually being racist, he was kidding. But it was recorded and it made Reagan look bad posthumously. And I just disagree with people recording stuff like that because generally, again, if you're committing a crime, I would understand why you would record somebody doing that. But if you're just talking about, just contractual stuff, you shouldn't be recording it and much less exposing it to the media. And again, I kind of agree with, maybe you record it so that you remember the call, I suppose, or for your own records in case something crazy happens, then you can do it that way. But to expose it onto the media, it's just ridiculous. There's a reason why there's a law for revenge porn. I don't want to say the real word to not get, demonetized or something. But, where you film it and you can film it and keep it, but you can't film it and then put it out on the internet when your girlfriend breaks up with you because that's just that's out of pocket, of course, and inappropriate. So I'll just say that. So again, so people do not trust him as much anymore because he recorded confidential stuff with the Daily Wire, and people are not going to trust him as much. And then again, doubling down, people like Candace Owens and whatnot already burned the bridge with him because they don't trust him, and because of that, nobody from the Daily Wire is going to want to hang out with the guy. And then on top of that, anybody who isn't involved with the Daily Wire are going to see that Crowder, as on his own, is less relevant to the Daily Wire as a conglomerate, thus meaning that, generally speaking, you will have less influence as a creator from the Crowder perspective. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about is how, obviously Crowder's going to have to make it out on his own. And like I said, his income model is not going to be profitable. And again, he's going to be out on an island. And this is really important because the Daily Wire, from what I can understand, has a certain contract or, verbal agreement with YouTube that they won't get banned, which also encapsulates their creators. With a contract with Google or whatever have you, they made a deal more or less to say that, we're going to censor ourselves. We're not going to talk about the election. You know what I mean, right? We're not going to talk about certain injections. We're not going to talk about certain like gay stuff. And in exchange, you're going to keep us on YouTube, and we're going to make hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, and propagandize to millions of people. And again, YouTube benefits because they'll basically be a stopgap to the red pill to say, here's your controlled opposition. Us and the paleo conservatives get it, right? Anyway, the point being is that they're there to be controlled opposition, and they agree to that, and I understand why, because they want to make money. Here's the thing. The Blaze also has the same thing, right? Elijah Schaffer had protection for a lot of things. He went to January 6th, was in the Capitol himself, not to be a snitch, and he got away with it because he had a press pass from the Blaze, I believe. So again, these Con Inc. institutions have a lot of protections, and so I completely understand why people would want to join in. The thing is that if you're going to burn the bridge with them, you best believe that you have to come with the king with the right respect and punch him and knock him out, because if you don't, Ben Shapiro is going to be able to talk about you nonstop, not get banned because he is under the umbrella of the Daily Wire. Whereas in the case of somebody like Steven Crowder, he's not going to get protection from anybody. We're talking about the major institutions, right? We're talking about Daily Wire. He's out of there. The Blaze, cut. That bridge is burnt. And then what are you left with that has YouTube protection? Maybe PragerU, but PragerU is very close to Daily Wire. I doubt that those, they're very, inbred. So, I mean, like, where are you going to go, Steven? And again, Steven isn't really friendly to, any sort of like America First, like dissident right movement. I doubt he'll join them. And I doubt that he'll have a lot of fun making content on Rumble and just wither away on Rumble, which is like a gulag basically in terms of new content. So, generally speaking, his trajectory is way down now. And, it's unfortunate. He could have just stayed on the Daily Wire and joined them, make $12.5 million a year, and then over time build his brand to the point where he could ask for more money and have that be reasonable. But instead, he's likely going to be on YouTube. He'll probably get banned at some point in the next several months to a couple years because, again, he won't be afforded the same protections that other people have. And at the same time, he probably won't go balls to the wall on the red pill and a bunch of stuff that we know as conservatives to be true because he doesn't want to get banned on YouTube. But inevitably, he will get banned. And by the time he does speak about these so-called red pills or whatever, he's going to be on Rumble where it won't have as much of an influence. You saw that kind of happen with Kanye West where, he was saying a lot of things that were controversial and you thought, wow, this is really interesting to the dialectic in the zeitgeist. And then he got banned right away. Why? Because they don't let you speak about these things. So if you don't have the protection of the Daily Wire, then you cannot expect to say anything that profound, meaning that, Crowder is going to die in mediocrity, unfortunately for him. That's too bad. I never watched the guy, but then again, I kind of respect the amount of clout it took to get to where he is and how much influence he had over the culture, because I know many people that have seen Ben Shapiro, have seen Crowder, and those are people that don't even talk about dissident right things like I do. So that is going to be my take. So the final 30-second summary for you guys is going to be that, Steven Crowder kind of did the right thing in exposing some of the contract stuff and being somewhat more transparent about the thing. And we got to learn about that. At the same time, the Daily Wire had a valid criticism and, basically big broed Steven Crowder and fathered him, or sonned him, sorry. And that is interesting because basically they're imperfect people, but you're coming from a standpoint of we got to make money, we got to cut. And unfortunately, that is the reality of life. So now Steven Crowder is going to fade into obscurity over time, I believe, and the Daily Wire will stay relevant. Again, not with full sovereignty. It's like basically Steven Crowder is like Yugoslavia, the SFR, who basically severed ties with the Soviet Union but withered away in the 90s. Or and then you can look at a different Soviet Republic satellite country like Poland, like the Daily Wire, who again maligned by the Soviets, but then again were able to become westernized over time and prosper in their own right. Hopefully that'll happen for all conservatives, that will be replatformed and be able to say what we want to. But until then, it looks like it was a complete and total loss for Steven Crowder. We'll see how his Mug Club does in terms of sales later on. But anyways, thank you all for watching the video, and I'll see you guys later.